Hello and welcome back to Disney Journey. I'm retired Imagineer Jim Shull, and on this episode I'll be sharing the story of the Disney Studios Paris, the park that some consider the worst of all the Disney parks. We'll go into the history, its present, and its future, and I'll be sharing exclusive, never-before-seen photographs of the construction of that park. So we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Soon after Michael Eisner announced that the Disney company would be building a new theme park resort in France, construction began. Dirt was moved and roads to the site were opened, and soon a castle rose on what had been once beet fields. When the opening day ribbon was cut, the guests came, and they came, and they came, and they came, and they liked what they saw. But Euro Disneyland as a business, it did not have a smooth first couple of years. Euro Disneyland is a business case study of how you can have a fantastic concept, well executed, but as a business, when it fails, the house of cards collapses. And so it was with Euro Disneyland. Financially, the park struggled for quite a while. There was a period where, the attentions of the Walt Disney Company were focused on Paris, and the situation financially was rectified, which is good news because, according to the master agreement, the company was committed to open a second gate, a second theme park next door. The master agreement started the ticking clock. And after a little bit of consideration, Disney went to the thing that was really kind of a natural no-brainer. The Disney MGM Studios, when it opened, was successful immediately, to the point when the parking lots opened, they were closed 30 minutes after they opened every single morning. And that was because of the success of the park. Now, understand that the French love their cinema just as much, if not more, than the Americans do. Building Disney MGM Studios Europe was a no-brainer. However, building a second version of the Disney MGM Studios in France was not going to be a viable option. So now let's take a moment to understand why, and what replaced it, and the reasons why it's so different in France than it is over there in Orlando. The second park in Europe opened with a different name due to Disney not being able to use the MGM name. Also different was how much of this new park was to be covered and climate controlled. Paris is located in northern France, and it's very typical that it be both cold and damp most of the year. I worked on Euro Disneyland, and so I was enlisted to, again, return to France to work on the new park. DMSC, which is short for Disney MGM Studios Europe, took inspiration from the entertainment pavilion planned for Epcot, mixed with a classic version of old glamorous Hollywood. But this idea was never built, which is a shame, because Europe itself has beautiful classic movie studio sound stages and backlots, and DMSC would have borrowed from those as well. A true mashup of all that we love about cinema. DMSC was in the rearview now, and the Disney Studios Paris, that was going forward quickly. Now, it borrowed a lot of the things from Florida, such as the faux water tower, which meant now there were two water towers on Disney properties. Neither one of them held a drop. The construction on DSP began, and soon the covered Main Street and flanking side theaters were rising up from the former farmland. The Aladdin Flat Ride was one of the three rides, and only three rides, in this park, and it was a near copy of the ride that I designed for Walt Disney World. The two theaters that flanked either side of Soundstage 1 were different from any other Disney park because both had fabric roofs. In retrospect, not the best idea. Nearby was the Disney Channel building, and this contained sound stages that were used for shows on the Disney Channel in Europe. The plans to move feature animation and character voices from London, well, they never occurred. The tram tour was a very simple ride. It allowed the guests to see props, old television sets, not the kind you watch, but the kind you know what I mean, and a recreation of a scene in a film. You know, the fire effect was, well, it was impressive and loud. So much so that I can tell you that I always knew when it went off because, well, my office was directly behind this brick wall, and that fire blast made a noise. Along the tram tour were old props. There were planes, there were jeeps, there were old cars, even props from the old Horizons ride at Epcot. The outside stunt show and the indoor stunt show were both located in a faux industrial backlot. These buildings were all metal-sided and they lacked both charm and interesting detail. And for good reason, neither survives today. Finally, the day came and the Disney Studios in Paris were officially open to guests. The clapboards came out. The arch was undraped, the fireworks went off, and guests were invited to visit the greatest and latest theme park that Disney had offered them. After one master agreement in 10 years, the box had been ticked off. However, the new park was compared to the old park, the first park, and it was found lacking. Guests complained about Disney's half-day expansion. They compared the two parks, and they liked the first one, well, they liked it a lot better. After a while, Disney looked for a solution, and they actually found it back in Orlando, where that original park, changed the name. And so now it was time to do the same in Paris. And so we say goodbye to the first park name, and now we say hello to the second park's name, Adventure World. Adventure World would be a generic catch-all of a park, not a studio. It's a place that anything could appear while drawing inspiration from the Disney campus there in Burbank, California. If nothing else, Adventure World would be more green and more soft and more inviting. Stage 1 will be gone at Adventure World. It'll be replaced by a smaller version of Stage 1. But now, this time, it'll have a theater facade. And that's the place that guests will move through in order to, well, not exactly ride the movies as much as visit the movies. The idea is that you'll be going to mini lands within the park, around a lake, and you'll be able to, see things that you might not otherwise have seen in the old studio park. Because honestly, there's only so much you can do in a studio, and when you're not really committing to one particular theme, well, the sky is the limit. You can bring in the glamour, you can bring in the Hollywood premiere feel, you can bring in set props and lighting rigs and make the place a lot more of a fantasy-based environment. Not reality-based, not educational, but something where you're telling a fantasy-based story, which, after all, isn't that what Hollywood excels at? Fantasy? Just like Disneyland Paris. But for now, the red carpet is being rolled up, and the key lights are being dimmed on what had opened as the Disney Studios Park, Paris. With that, we bring this episode of Disney Journey to a close. But keep your bag packed because there's going to be another trip real soon. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and also to ring the bell to be notified of the next episode. Until the next time then, it's goodbye from Lost Canyon.